All right, I think we got some action on screen. Cool. We got some disclaimers. I think people are probably filing in. Hopefully, we get a good crowd today. We got a lot to talk about. I got some awesome guests. So, of course, this is being recorded, and it's going to be posted up on YouTube. So we'll be able to check it out in the future. You can share it with friends. You can share it with colleagues, anyone who missed it. Yeah, and we're really grateful that you guys are here. It looks like it's going to be a great crowd today. I think we had over 100 people that are tuning in. That's the RSVP list. So I hope that we have a bunch of good questions. As I mentioned, we got two great people flanking me here. Greg Wilson, one of my good buddies, and Ben. I'll kind of go into introductions for them, and they can introduce themselves. But this whole thing happens with the audience that's on the webinar with us. So I really want to thank you guys for taking an hour out of your day to learn more about Victory and to learn more about what's happening in the hemp world and agriculture and materials and food and all the places that our business solutions touch. So it's great to have so much participation in this. There's a microcosm around supporting what we're doing, and we know that there's a lot of believers in this thing making a big impact. So, I want to start with this slide, right? I want to tell a little bit of story. I mean, this slide is set to have you go back in time. I mean, imagine you're standing at the edge of an agricultural revolution, right? 1851, the year that Illinois and Iowa farmers first planted soybeans. It was just a handful of curious farmers that planted a crop that would eventually transform global food system, create a massive feed supply and fuel systems or a fuel. At that time, no one really believed or could have imagined that soybean would have become $100 billion a year commodity that's woven into every facet of modern life. But here we are. And I would say, and I think there's a bunch of people around me that would agree, that today hemp is standing in that same moment. And so after decades of prohibition, with the seed being under the potato basket, so to speak, we're introducing one of the world's most versatile crops back into agricultural economy. It's one that delivers protein from the seeds for human health, for oil, for energy, fiber for sustainable materials. Greg's going to dive into that pretty deep with us. And just like those really early soy pioneers, Victory Hemp is building the market from the ground up. All of our industry partners are. We have partners in agronomy, in genetics, in processing, downstream in formulation, and of course, it all starts with the farmer, and we consider them a really important part of our value chain. So the products that we make, the needs of today's consumers are being met with this crop, and I think that we're pretty excited about telling you what's next. We're not waiting for the market to catch up. We're meeting it where it is. So yeah, greetings from Kentucky. Greg's in Kentucky. Ben's here. Thank you all so much for giving us this opportunity to tell our story about our business and share a little bit more about our community round on WeFunder. So my name's Chad Rosen. I started this business in 2014 when they passed that first farm bill. I've been at it in the trenches here for quite some time. I've always worked in manufacturing businesses before I got into Victory, before I started this business. Worked in furniture manufacturing down in Maquiladores in Mexico and over in Southeast Asia. I worked with building materials, which is a language that Greg and I can kind of speak fluently to each other. And I was on the founding team of a manufacturing business there that pioneered recycled glass surfaces for like high performing sustainable buildings. Greg and his friends call them LEED buildings, leadership in energy and environmental design. So shoe in for hemp products. and recycled glass products, right? So that was a business we eventually sold to the largest North American natural stone manufacturer, and and I went on to figure out what was next there, and I always had a passion for seasons, and I always had a passion for kind of exercise and working out, and you know, I hated the bloat that would go along with drinking whey protein, and I used hemp for quite some time and understood it to be tremendously nutritious, but didn't really like the flavor of the protein. I always kind of wondered why it wasn't better. And so when the 2014 Farm Bill passed, and agriculture was in a really tough spot, and I was looking for something that would have an impact and also meet some of the pain points that I was having as a consumer. I really saw that as my opportunity to jump in. And they say fools rush in, and I'm at the top of the pile when it comes to that. So yeah, when Congress provided legislation that put hemp on the map, and made a pathway to legality in 2014, I saw that clearly as my opportunity to build a domestic ingredient manufacturing business. And so that's what Victory Hemp Foods is. So we'll talk a lot about that. Along the way, I've been the board member of the Kentucky Organic Association. I was the former president of the Kentucky Hemp Industry Association, which was one of the largest membership chapters in the U.S. And so yeah, so Ben, I'm going to let you talk about yourself, but give our audience a little bit of your arc of your career, and also some of your educational background. We refer to Ben as our resident pointy head in the room. So I defer all
Yeah, I
that
don't
to
I
you.
don't think I'm a token anything. Um, I'm Ben Raymond. I run the R&D department at Victory Hemp Foods and touch on a lot of other things as you do in a small company. Classically trained food scientist. So I did a bachelor's in food science, a master's in food science, and eventually an MBA to kind of round out my understanding of how food businesses work and get interested in entrepreneurship. Um, I've worked in food ingredients my entire career, starting as an intern as an undergrad in a cheese factory. I've worked on hydrocolloids, thickeners, gelling agents, things like that, natural food colors, extracting food colors from annatto seeds, purple corn, sorghum, all sorts of things. Developed dozens of products at my time at D.D. Williamson. With Victory, we've developed a couple different products that I've spearheaded. We've currently have two patents awarded and then three more patents in progress in the US, Canada, and the European Union. Yeah, I think I am the resident pointy head, so all things technical kind of point back to me.
Couldn't do it without them. And we have
Yeah.
a wonderful team here, but so much of what we do is technical as we are the settlers in this early kind of days. So having someone who can technically understand and find solutions to our manufacturing challenges is why we brought him on the call, because technology is such an important part of moving this business forward. He's been on my hip this entire ride as we've really made progress. And then finally, Greg, you want to give us a little bit of your background, our special guest?
Yeah, sure. Well, in this photo, I was about 15 pounds heavier. So you can see in the picture, I got some chubby cheeks. But I met Chad in a hemp field in West Kentucky 7 or 8 years ago at JT Workman's farm. He was growing hemp for multiple purposes. So they were growing it for seed for replanting, for seed for human consumption, and they were trying to figure out what to do with animal consumption. And then I was buying the stalks. So while kind of banging around in the hemp fields, Chad was out there checking out his crop while I was out there checking out my crop. And we kind of talked about what we were doing. I was new to the hemp industry at that point because I started out in bamboo. I'm an engineer, have an MBA. I build factories, invent products, things like that. So I was doing strand woven bamboo, followed by eucalyptus, smart oak, and now hempwood. And so I kind of invent new things and start new businesses around them, sell off what portion of it that I need to in order to be able to finance the next one. The first one did really well. It did an IPO in 2007 around the bamboo. So I've got to work for myself since then. So I've got a bunch of patents and trademarks around the world, the US, Canada, Europe, Australia. And I've been doing it I guess since 2003. So it's kind of 22, 23 years of inventing healthy, sustainable building materials that grow fast. So plant fibers that are able to be converted into wood composites to make flooring, furniture, cabinetry, and even getting into structural to build houses. And it's all based off of the Fibonacci sequence because that's my parent company. When you see the logo of HempWood, it's got that Greek letter phi that looks like a tree that I stick in all the different logos of the different products that I invent, because the Fibonacci sequence is nature's algorithm. It's the carbon sequestration ratio of plants, and then the compression ratio of me turning that fast growing plant fiber that sequesters carbon quickly into a replacement for hardwood. So that creates your optimum density, which equals your hardness, your stability, and your fire resistance for making things that can go into your home.
Awesome. Greg's been such a good friend too. We talk a couple times a week. We're both founders in this young emerging industry, and he's just been super grateful to have him as a friend and a business colleague. And behind me, I'll just plug, this is our wall of fame. We have some of our customers' products behind my head, and they all sit on in front of our HempWood wall. So if anyone's looking to dress up their house or their ADU with hardwood flooring or some kind of backwood, this is an ideal choice, and you can find more about his company at hempwood.com. Is that right, Greg?
Absolutely. We're the only HempWood in the world, so all roads lead to Murray, Kentucky.
All right, good deal. All right, well, let's get into the agenda. What we're here to talk about today. We're facing a really tough time. I don't know if anyone saw the article that came out or the letter that was published by the Cattlemen's Association, but farmers are feeling a lot of pain today, right? And there isn't a market that's driven by a supply chain. I don't want to allude to the fact that or point to the fact that this is going to be any different. But there are timely solutions that we're presenting, and we have an amazingly valuable crop that we're bringing to market that is looking for products that we manufacture. So we're talking about rebuilding American agriculture in some ways, revitalizing what is Kentucky manufacturing here as a food processor. And a material manufacturer. We're bringing jobs back home by onshoring. That's not hyperbole. We're actually participating in that. And we'll talk about the Victory Hemp investment opportunity, and we'll get to a bunch of Q&A at the end, I hope. There is a little Q&A feature on the Zoom bar right next to the share, which is probably disabled on your screens, but yeah, look down in the bar below, and we can get to that, and we can go through some of the questions. So we have an exciting conversation here ahead of us. I think we want to talk about this one plant that has endless opportunities, and we'll talk about some of those. And to be perfectly clear, at Victory, we focus on the seed. That is all we do. We don't do anything with THC. We don't do anything with CBD. We don't do anything with the fibers. When I talk about fibers, I'm not talking about dietary fiber. I'm talking about the straw that gets separated into the infamous fiber and hurd. So we stay laser focused on the seed, and everything starts with the seed, right? So I think that some of the reasons that we're here and the reasons that hemp became legal in 2014, can't really tell the story about what we're doing without talking about the why, which is what got me involved in it. I started seeing Kentucky was really the epicenter of hemp coming back into legality. It was driven by our legislators here in Kentucky. They went to Washington and they introduced legislation that essentially legalized industrial hemp, or defined it as different than marijuana in the cannabis sativa family. And it was just such a head scratcher for me, given the why are conservative Republicans getting in bed with cannabis? That just seemed really weird. But as you peel back the layer of the onion, as I pulled back the layer of the onion, I learned a lot of things. I learned that the tobacco buyout was ending. The tobacco buyout was a big settlement with the tobacco companies that was paid out to farmers here in Kentucky to get them to transition out of growing tobacco, because lo and behold, tobacco wasn't good for consumers and it was killing them. There were big lawsuits. There was a big pile of money that got redistributed to help farmers transition away from it, expecting a demand to tail off. And that's exactly what happened. But in 2014, that buyout was done. So farmers were really desperate for a new crop. Corn was $3.50 a bushel. Soybeans were $8.50 a bushel. Farmers were in a real tough spot, and they needed a new crop. A lot of them had drills in the barn that had a hemp setting on it to plant. And they said, my granddaddy grew hemp. They said that to their commissioner of agriculture, Jamie Comer, and he brought that to the Kentucky delegation of legislators, and they passed hemp. So, hemp is a tremendous opportunity to introduce a new crop that is pretty much into a system that's really relied on two major crops, which is corn and soybeans. And there's other large commodities, cotton, wheat, but those are the two predominant crops, especially around here in central in the Midwest. And that monocropping system has kind of broken the food system, and it's put farmers in a really, I would say, a tough spot because they're relying on just a couple markets. They're not close to the market at all. And they have very limited options. And because the prices fluctuate, and because the prices are not outrunning their costs to any large degree, they have to expand their yields by using technology that isn't always good for soil health or consumer health. And that kind of secret is out of the bag. And I think there's this perception and this challenge between farmers who are growing these crops, or agribusinesses, the agribusiness monopolies that are bringing these crops to market and consumers. And consumers are asking for different. So hemp presents some solutions here. And I won't say that hemp or I won't say that soybeans or corn or wheat, cotton are inherently evil crops. No, that's not what we're saying at all. It's really how they're raised. It's the system that they're grown in, and that is where we have an opportunity. We're starting at the ground. We have an opportunity to bring this crop into a regenerative system, to be a rotational crop. It has an amazing ability to shade out weeds, which reduces pesticides. It breaks up pest cycles because it's not the same crop over and over, and breaks up weed cycles as well. So there's a big root system, so it helps plants that follow it grow better. There's a lot of environmental impact to growing this crop, and it has a tremendous nutritional profile that Ben can kind of go into. And also it appeals to a lot of different segments of a variety of markets. And that's just all from the hemp seed. So we're the number one, or we're the largest hemp heart and oil manufacturer and protein and oil manufacturer in North America. Tell you kind of a little bit how we got there. And Ben, I mean, why don't you talk a little bit about the market demand and tell us how some of the things that are happening today, some of the things that are probably familiar with the people that are on this, as do some news jacking and talk about how
Yeah,
headlines really interact with what we're doing.
sure. I think I'm going to mention a lot of things that are probably familiar to those on the call. As a food scientist, there's always a request stay on top of industry trends, consumer trends, and preferences. Uh, we're seeing some pretty big changes today with the development of GLP-1s, drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy, that class. People are eating a lot less. They're looking for much more nutrient-dense foods. They just don't have the volume to eat. So they're looking for foods with more protein, with more minerals, more vitamins, more fiber. Hemp fits a lot of those really nicely. Younger generations, I'm a millennial. I guess I'm not the young generation anymore. Gen Z is really looking at free from as something that they eat and want to eat. It's not a restriction. It's a goal. It's even an aspirational goal. So looking at free from dairy, free from allergens, free from, it could be pesticides, an organic product. There's a lot of different places that fits. Um, and that's a huge market. It's measured in the hundreds of billions. Hemp obviously doesn't produce ingredients that fit every one of those buckets, but we do a couple core products: protein concentrate, vegetable oil from the hemp seed, highly nutritional. And it fits in a lot of those free froms. We are free from all the major allergens. We are free from gluten, available and organic. Everything is kosher. Everything is non-GMO. Our ingredients are all Ecovitus Gold certified from our facility in Carrollton, Kentucky. So it fits ESG goals for consumers to feel good about what they're eating and for companies to improve their ESG performance. But that market for products that I think were previously kind of niche and didn't fit the mainstream is now becoming the mainstream. And our hemp ingredients fit across the board, broad functionality, and they're really so. Um, we're seeing some launches with big brands, right? So you're talking not necessarily everything from a niche brand, you're ordering D2C because it fits a particular audience, but also that center of the grocery store. And we're taking market space away from some of those really, kind of the stalwarts, right? The low nutrition but high brand loyalty products. Those are going by the wayside. Um, yeah, I think that's probably it for now. I'll turn it back over to you, Chad.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about like the functionality
Yeah.
of our products?
Why does it fit there, right? So
Yeah.
that's a lot of the free from on the labeling, right? So you can use our ingredients, increase the protein content of your product. So you can say it's a good source of protein or an excellent source of protein or a great source of zinc, some of those micronutrients that are hard to get from a lot of processed foods. Um, we have a couple core products. Our hemp seed oil works fantastically well when you're looking to increase looking at your lipids, right? So most consumers in the US are eating a ton of omega-6. They're getting it from vegetable oils. I am not a seed oil hater myself. Um, but I think it's fair to say most Americans aren't consuming enough omega-3s. It's not that easy to do unless you're eating a lot of seafood, and that's cost prohibitive in a lot of ways. And you're also exposing yourself to other risks, looking, especially at mercury and heavy metals. We increase the omega-3 content of anything that you add our hemp seed oil into. It works great in skincare. It's non-comedogenic. It's a dry oil. It goes on smooth. It feels nice. It works in all sorts of different formulations there. Um, it's
And we
best
also we
used.
also sell
Go
it
ahead.
in the hemp parts. You get a lot of it in
Yeah.
the hemp parts, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at our product offerings, hemp hearts are rich in protein, rich in oil. And when you're buying our protein ingredients or our oil ingredients, really all we're doing is separating those two things through a physical process, no processing aids, no additives, no preservatives, no added chemicals, no hexanes or any of the anes or alkenes. Um, The protein ingredients have broad functionality. It gels nicely. You can replace eggs and gluten-free and vegan products. That's a really fantastic feature. I would describe it as the workhorse. It fits in a ton of different applications, protein bars, drink mixes, shelf-stable drinks, kind of you name it, it fits in most buckets. The hemp hearts provide all of that nutrition. They fit in a lot of different places as well. So really what we're doing is you can use, if you can't use the hemp heart, you can probably use the hemp seed oil or the protein. There's a lot of different ways that you can use hemp ingredients and we're kind of getting them out there and they're blandest tasting, and I say that very proudly form. Um, it doesn't impact the flavor of your products in a meaningful way. Lots of plant proteins taste kind of funky. So it's
Yeah.
broad. The applications are huge. It's almost limitless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to mention any of the brands that we not necessarily by name, but some of the product
Yeah.
launches
Yeah.
that are happening this year?
Yeah. There's a bar that's coming out shortly. I'm always the hew to the letter of the contract 100%, and I try not to fudge things too much. So um bar coming out very shortly here, a better for you cookie bar. In the center aisle, you'll see some gluten-free baked goods, that frozen aisle. Our hemp protein is a core functional ingredient there. It's on the label because it provides really good functionality to that product, replacing gluten. Gluten is the workhorse of, traditional wheat-based bakery, and it's not easy to replace. That's why so much gluten-free bakery is kind of meh. You can help fix that problem using hemp protein. We've got hemp hearts in meat sticks, that kind of snack category to improve the nutritional content. We have snack clusters, so think like a chocolate covered protein cluster. all manner of protein bars. There's a couple different brands that have launched recently using our hemp seed protein or hemp heart protein in the organic space, and they're doing phenomenally well. Taste really great.
It's
The
been
oil we see, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's been, it's been a long road, and we started a farmers market selling protein and oil and hearts, and there's just something so gratifying about being able to walk through the airport and stop and grab a snack at
I forgot about the snacks. Yeah,
yeah, and grab something that has our ingredients in it right before flight. It's exciting. It's going into products that you can find at every major grocer, and so I think
yeah.
that, as Ben mentioned, it's the ingredients are finding their way into almost every aisle in the grocery store because it has so much versatility and its function. Um,
I can say as a consumer,
yeah,
my wife buys your hemp hearts off of Amazon. So those things are always sitting in the refrigerator. I'll sprinkle it on a little bit or whatever
nice.
she's cooking or whatever she's out of town right now, and I can grab those and just throw it on a salad or something. As well as I think you guys have some ingredients in like Dave's Killer Bread. If I remember correctly, I eat that stuff fairly regularly. And I know
You said it, Cabron. We didn't say it. You
I,
said it.
Franny's Pharmacy as well. I went to have some of their hemp pasta not too long ago. So there's some, I believe, RX bars or some of those other protein bars. So there's 3 or 4 different things that I can think of right off the tip of my tongue that I eat already that just happen to have your proteins in them. And so it's starting to gain traction when you go to Whole Foods and you can pick up something and say, oh, that's actually my buddy is a part of that.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a good segue into to talking a little bit. I'm getting hungry. We're coming up on lunch here on the East Coast. We're past it actually, so I'm getting a little hangry. But it's a good segue into talking about hemp's versatility, right? Let's talk about it beyond food. So give us the Cliff's notes on what does HempWood do, how it's renewable, how it performs in people's homes, and talk to us about how you're doing. I mean, before the call, we were talking about all the places that you're in Europe. I actually didn't know that, and so yeah, I'd love for you to share that with our audience because it's a real story about a business that's growing.
Yeah, well, so hempwood is the healthiest, most sustainable building material in the world. And I can say that with one hand in the air and one hand on the Bible, because I've worked in the building space for a long time. I grew up in a family of builders. We were framing, I was laying wood floors. Before I could drive, I was humping the shingles up to the roof when I was 13 years old. And so when you get into all the dirty chemicals and all the different things that go into somebody's home, it's insane what people are willing to put in their home and breathe in, just like what people are willing to eat or drink. If you go to McDonald's or some of these different places, and you have to ask what percentage of the chicken nugget is actually chicken, that
And,
makes no sense to me.
and you live on an organic farm, so if anyone knows about and cares about what they're putting in their body, I mean, that's
Oh,
you.
absolutely. I've had serious health issues. It comes from working in China in the bamboo flooring industry, where I was working around formaldehyde every day. And when we came up with the idea of, hey, we're going to start using natural glues instead of formaldehyde bonding things together, the price increased. And so the powers that be, aka my boss, said, hey, we have to figure out what is worth it. Is the dollar worth more than the healthy aspect of the material? And the answer was that our marketing team changed the safety data sheets to say phenolic resin instead of phenol formaldehyde as the bonding agent. And that was my signal to exit and go start something new. Because me and my team are getting sick from the different chemicals being put into the building materials. And the marketing and sales team was worried about how much profit can we make. And so I saw hemp coming about. It was just becoming legal in the United States in 2014. And I'd been tinkering around with it over in China. So we packed the bags and moved to Kentucky, filed some patents, and built a couple of factories here. Now we got 24 employees. We have hemp stalks that are bound together with soy adhesive. Hemp does work whenever it actually gets big enough. You could have a price parity to be able to use hemp seed instead of soybean to bond together fibers. We use natural
As a
coatings,
glue.
water-based. Yeah, it works. We've tried it, we've tested it. There's just, I can't buy a truckload every 6 weeks of hemp flour in order to make soybean or to make our glue like we do with soybeans, and we're paying like 40 cents a pound for it. And so as things scale and Chad's vision of this huge industry come about, there's a lot of other industrial uses for the seed because we're using the stalk on the bottom of the plant. After Chad and his team or some of the other growers take off the top of the plant, we get the bottom of the plant and it comes here in a baled format, break open the cell structure, soak it in a plant-based adhesive, compress it. We actually use our waste as our thermal energy for the mill, so we don't have to rely on fossil fuels. We have hydro and solar electric. We try to do everything right. It means we're not the cheapest nor the most convenient material to have, but it's not going to make you sick because we have zero VOCs. And a lot of our customers are people that are worried about what they're eating, what they're drinking, and what they're breathing. And so if more people start looking into what's actually going into your home, then they'll start realizing that we serve a lot of schools, universities, and government buildings that are putting zero VOC classrooms in. And the zero VOC classrooms actually lead to improved indoor air quality, higher cognitive ability for the students, higher test scores. There's factual data that shows if you don't have asbestos floors and lead paint in the walls and formaldehyde in the desk, that your students actually have a higher attendance rate and they have higher test scores. That means they're going to have a brighter future. And some of these schools that we're getting into, like where I was yesterday in Warren County, Kentucky, they do net zero schools. They have no fried food in the lunches. They have zero VOC classrooms. And they're the #1 school district in the state. And so what you guys are talking about with the health and wellness of what people are eating, we're coupling that with the bottom of the plant and saying, hey, that actually follows through that when somebody has allergies or you have new children and you don't want them climbing around on a vinyl floor because you know that that's not going to lead to an improvement in their developmental stages, then that's where our customer base is. That's where it fits. That's how we tie together with you guys, saying that we're using the same plant. You guys are using it for nutrition. We're using it for indoor air quality.
I love it. I mean, and I finally understand why I was such a poor student in high school. But honestly, the part about a healthy indoor air environment, what you're breathing, what you're putting into your body, whether you're ingesting it or whether you're inhaling it, it has a direct effect on your health. And with healthcare being more and more expensive, the best way to avoid costs is to be proactive, right? So I think we're both driven by a mission here, and I think that's why there's
In
so much
engineering terms, we
around this
call that
place.
preventative maintenance.
Preventative maintenance. We got a preventative maintenance program here at the factory. Why shouldn't we have one at home? So yeah, so look, I mean, I think that from my perspective, we have a factory that's staffing. We got 18 people here. We're shipping truckloads of protein and oil on the monthly,
Mhm.
and this is no longer an experimentation, right? Like we've been doing this long enough. It's about scaling, and we're ready to scale. And I think that there's an inevitable transition that's happening towards this domestic or North American regenerative production, and it requires this middleman, and that middleman is you and me, Greg, or Victory and HempWood, really. So let's get into the market size. I think that there's it's a big market, right? And I think that from my perspective, we look at this market as what's the addressable market, and why is it? It's $200 billion. That's a really big market, but how is that credible, right? How can I look you in the eye and tell you it's a $200 billion market? It breaks up pretty easy. And from my perspective, I don't see how it isn't. We're not addressing that market. And I'm just talking about the seeds, right? I'm not talking about the CBD, and I'm not talking about the fiber, because to be perfectly honest, I got my hands full figuring out where I'm going to sell our products, where we're going to sell our products, as opposed to worrying about what Greg's target market is. So we break it up into 4 buckets, right? We look at food and beverage ingredients. We look at animal feed and animal nutrition. We look at industrial and bio-based materials. So think fuels, think polymers, think elastomers, and then think the energy, fuel, and renewables or carbon markets. And I know that there's the winds are kind of blowing cold on that last one. But this is a cyclical market, and the pendulum will swing, and those markets will come back pretty fiercely. The food and beverage market, that's a $100 billion market alone, right? Plant-based proteins take up are projected to take up 75 billion of that globally by 2023. Now, we're not talking about taking all of it. But I think that it works in so many applications that we could take a large market share of it. Plant oils and functional fats that come from the other side of the seed, right? That's a $250 billion market. Our oil represents, I think, immediate drop-in replacements for a lot of different oils as it relates to topical solutions or anything that's looking for a clean label or high in omega 3s, omega rich oil. So there's an enormous market that we continue to be sold out, and our oil's sold out through the end of into January now with the order that came in yesterday. So we are really behind in our production for the oil. So that's showing really strong revenue. And then, functional foods, beverages, nutraceuticals, that's another huge market. You're talking about your ready to mix protein drinks, or your ready to drink protein drinks. I think a lot of people know what those are. The amino acid profile of hemp is complete. It's only limited. Its first limiting amino acid is lysine, which makes it a tremendous candidate to be blended with legume proteins, pea proteins. It's an allergen-free protein. We got a customer who's got a tremendous tagline that he trademarked. He says it's the goat of no bloat, which I love. And we're making, I would say, the highest and cleanest protein in North America that doesn't use any solvents. We don't heat our products up, so we touch on all these markets really well. I think the other one that's a really big one is animal feed, pet nutrition. I mean, this is a $500 billion market, and the percentage that we could take of that is large. FDA and AFCO approvals are advancing hemp meal. A lot of that is and oil and hearts. A lot of that is due to our friends over at the Hemp Feed
Coalition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ben, what do you do with them? You're an advisor on the board?
I've taken a little bit of a step back these days. More active participant in previous years. Yeah.
But they're doing great work.
Well,
They're getting legislation passed, and they're getting rules written, and we're seeing more and more opportunities for animal feed. And then industrial and
Absolutely.
bio-based materials as it relates to hemp hulls, bass fibers, plastics, composites, construction materials, and then we're onshoring xylitol, right? This is a co-product that comes from the hull. And then finally, the energy and fuel market. That's easily a $200 billion market when you look at SAF.
Way more than that.
Renewable diesel, right? Yeah, I mean, it's more than that. So these numbers get pretty large pretty quick. Hemp seed oil has been validated as technically appropriate for SAF and renewable diesel by at least one. Our oil has, Victory's oil has been by at least one of the 5 major oil companies in the world. So this is there's a lot of blue sky in front of us as it relates to fuel markets and carbon markets. As we talked about, and as we know, the carbon markets, while the price of carbon is trading lower than it was a year ago, there's going to be more demand for it, and hemp is a tremendous capture and you can capture it and you can lock it up just like we did on our wall here. So there's a lot of different ways that it participates in that. And, again, I mentioned a little bit about the industrial materials, but Greg, can you take us through some of the more construction oriented industrial materials that you see and what the size of that market is?
Oh, absolutely. So, in a lot of things you touched about there, we power our mill with our waste hemp. So, when you're talking about biofuels, yep, we've been doing that for 7 years here. So, all of our thermal energy comes from the hemp. We grind it up, we burn it in our bio burner, spits out biochar, and that's our fertilizer we dump back into the soil in order to reduce the amount of potash we have to do the next year. I've also been feeding my animals on my organic farm for 6 years now, hemp seeds, and I'm still alive. So it's working pretty well. You're not allowed to, or haven't been allowed to, commercially sell the byproducts like the eggs that boost their proteins and omegas. But I have 26 chickens. Well, after last night, 24 chickens. And so I've been feeding them hemp seeds and we love it. We make the flooring, we make furniture, we make cabinetry. You can see it all on hempwood.com or check us out on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you want to find us online. We're getting into some structural materials too, what we call OHB to replace OSB. And we're starting to send that out. Carnegie Mellon just did a building with that about 6 months ago. It's not at price parity to make it a market launch product, but we're starting to build structures with it and try to figure out how we can make it more efficiently to get it cost competitive. So it's happening. We're the fastest growing manufacturer in the state of Kentucky for the last 3 years. And so we've won some awards and some accolades and stuff like that with Coolest Thing Made in Kentucky and the Bluegrass Ag Tech and the Western Kentucky Ag Tech Startup of the Year. So it's getting out there. We're on all continents except for Antarctica. We have sales that are basically doubling every year. Right now, it's not too easy, but the schools and universities are a real big driver of what we're doing. And it just makes sense to grow, make, and sell what goes into somebody's home on the same farm. I live on an organic farm. I work on a conventional farm. They're 4 miles apart, and I can literally ride my bike to work. If I go on the main road, it's about 25 miles. If I go the back way where I won't have cars, or sorry, not 25 miles, 25 minutes. The back way is about 41 minutes. So it's getting out there. It's growing. It's happening. The bamboo that we did, we grew that to over $1 billion a year in market, in actual sales. And so hemp has the exact same potential to follow parallels in the building industry, just like you're talking about in the food industry.
Great. All right. Well, look, I'm gonna dive into what this investment opportunity is all about. I think people have a question. They want to know about what Victory's doing, how we're going to grow it. So yeah, make it clear that we're the largest hemp heart and protein and oil manufacturer in North America. In fact, the last 3 months we've done a decent amount of revenue. I think that number, our cumulative revenue, is, this slide is dated. Although we did 628 last year, we're sailing through our $1 million run rate right now. Our run rate actually after this month is 2.4 million. We've seen the sales continue to go up and to the right. And that really happened after May when we got our new line online, right? So we've been sampling the market. We've been sending small amounts of product, but now we have a manufacturing facility, and you can learn about it on, there's a lot of YouTubes about our facility, and you can see for yourself how impressive it is. But because we have some capacity, we can now close sales and start shipping product to customers. And as I said, we're back ordered on it. The patents that we have, we were awarded a patent for the process that we're running today. It's one that doesn't use solvents, the process is, and it doesn't add heat in the manufacturing process, so it keeps us aligned with our customer base. And this patent really just gives us a head start in a lane that we have largely defined. Certainly here in North America, we've defined this lane of hemp heart protein and oil. And so we're doing that missionary work. And we need to expand. Our facility is probably the smallest oilseed crush in North America, at the same time as being the largest one, right? Like, and I'm talking about a soybean crush or a canola crush. It's very small from that standpoint, and we need to be at a larger capacity in order to get the leverage to be profitable. And so that's what the capital raise is for today, where we need to put more equipment into our building, or not this building, into a new facility. And we need to take more of the process. So we'll be dehulling, we'll be better utilizing our COGS by producing the xylitol, and we'll be increasing our production capacity on the presses to meet more market demand. We have a takeoff agreement for $20 million as it relates to the protein for one of the customers that we're working with currently. That's a take or pay agreement. So we're really excited about what the future looks like in terms of growing to meet customer demand. And our story is really about reducing our COGS at this point, and making better utilization of our COGS. When I say COGS, we're talking about our cost of goods. So that's our manufacturing overhead, that's our labor, and that's our raw material cost. So there's a number of things that we can do to reduce that, and that comes with making more and getting more leverage out of our equipment. Having bigger equipment is really a key to all that. And I think the other kind of main story here is that that we've been manufacturing. We've been doing this. This isn't a startup business. This is a growth story. This is investing to help the business scale, right? And at this point, it's still the valuation still looks like a startup business. I think about $15 million between debt and equity has gone into the business. So there's a great valuation on where we are. This facility, the line that we're running right now, it was to demonstrate that the technology worked. It was to demonstrate to our customers that we could deliver commercial volumes, and it was to confirm that our price points in the marketplace would sell through and earn us repeat business and takeoff agreements. And we have done all three of those, and so we've reduced the risk tremendously in the past 6 months by demonstrating all three of those. So our core business is built on B2B enterprise contracts. We supply bulk hemp protein and oil to food manufacturers and food ingredient providers. Although we do sell our ingredients on Amazon and consumer pouches, we don't spend a ton of time on TikTok and Instagram talking about the features and benefits of that. There's a little bit, but our focus is really putting all of our resources towards building a reliable supply chain out for our customers, so that they know that when they need our ingredients and their trucks bump the dock to get loaded, we're not going to slow down their production runs. That's a really important part of the value add that Victory is doing here. And if we're going to, and we anticipate we're going to accomplish our goals, we have a run rate that looks like reaching $30 million with the next iteration of this facility. We'll have an EBITDA of 15%. Of course, that's not guaranteed, but that's EBITDA is the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and that's really a metric that companies or acquirers use to value your company. So we see there as being a really positive growth story here that I think is unlimited, and the likelihood is that we find strategic partners along the way that want to participate and create some exit opportunity. But as I said, we're not starting this business. We're not raising capital we're raising capital to scale the business. And as I mentioned, revenue is heading up and to the right. So this facility, I would encourage you to look online and check out some of the videos about all the stainless steel that we have in our facility, but this facility is maxed out. We're onboarding customers as quick as possible. We have weekly visitors from different customers, and we're seeing more enterprise customers come online. So our goal is to break ground on a new 25,000 square foot facility, or purchase an existing facility that's going to be operational in early 2027, perhaps sooner, depending how things go. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our leadership team. So I go pretty wide. I can talk a little bit about everything, but I don't go very deep. This team keeps things on track. You want to talk about food science, you can spend days talking about food science with Ben. It's amazing when him and a food scientist square off at one of our trade shows and they just go down a rabbit hole for an hour on emulsification or whatever it is. So we have each of these guys on your screen is a master of their trade. FSQA manager Marlon. Ron is worked at Conagra and Treehouse Foods, making some of the most commoditized food ingredients in the world. He's used to 40 trucks showing up to pick up their loads every single day. And Thomas is the face of our sales organization, making connections with customers in every corner of the world. He's just done a tremendous job getting our products into Australia, Asia, Canada, and developing those relationships with large CPG customers and enterprise customers. And the amount of patience it takes to go through a sales cycle ingredients is tremendously long. And I think that's another hallmark of the patience of building a food ingredient company. This isn't a software company that we can just iterate on. We are working with other food manufacturers to get through their trials and then distribute our ingredients. And we're not working with just one client. We're working with tons of clients. We're working with over 40 different enterprise customers who are buying our products. And that's only growing and will only grow more as we increase our capacity. And I think the other, part of this is we want to talk about what the exit looks like. I hear a lot. I've heard of that a lot lately. I've heard of a number of, I've heard from a number of customers who are concerned about, or investors who are concerned about what does the exit look like? When does it come? And to be perfectly honest, we've had investors who have been in this, who have invested in this business for 10 years. And have been with us all along. And I think we're closer now than we've ever been to seeing some exit opportunities. There's some really exciting stuff. If you tune into the next webinar, there's a potential opportunity that could speed that up and provide liquidity for some of our investors. But as you see, the M&A market is strong for what we're doing. And then, I want to give you guys an opportunity to scan the QR code, which has a direct link to our WeFunder. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is the ask. We have discounted early bird terms that are ending pretty soon. We need to come out of the gate swinging to get really high on the algorithm for WeFunder, to send the emails, to send the blasts. So please share it with your networks. You can invest for as little as $100. This is it takes a village to raise a child kind of mentality. If you believe in what we're doing, this is an opportunity for you to do well by doing good. And I think that, I'm available for any kind of questions or follow up. But right now we have some time for Q&A. We didn't leave much time. I think we rambled a little bit too long, but I'll stick around for as long as we need to. Greg, if you could stick around for a little bit of time, I'm sure we've got a few questions, and we can try to get through some of those questions. So yeah, appreciate everyone tuning in. That kind of concludes the portion of the presentation. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Ben, for being part of this. Let's jump into some raw materials or some Q&A. First one I'm reading is on the raw material supply chain. Great question. What are the biggest bottlenecks you face today in sourcing high quality hemp seeds or from U.S. farmers? Where do you see gaps, agronomy, varietals, location, scale, that partner organizations might help address? That question comes from Milan Ludovico. Milan, great question. That's a tremendous question. And I think that Greg would echo, well, my answer is we straddle an enormous section of the value chain. In any other commodity, ingredient or material, there's a lot of different players. They call them tier manufacturers, right? There's first tier, second tier, third tier, fourth tier, fifth tier, before it gets to the consumer. And everyone's adding little value along the way. Everyone's optimized their system. Everyone has leverage in their operation to make profit along the way, and that gets the most efficient product to the next tier in a way that can keep that supply chain rolling. Here in hemp, this is again the seed that's been in the potato basket the last 80 years. A lot of that infrastructure has gone away. It's either gone overseas or there isn't a lot of knowledge around it. There's a lot of knowledge around, and there's a lot of crop science as it relates to corn, beans, cotton, wheat, and all that is now being applied to hemp. Since the USDA has got involved, they've done a pretty tremendous job by putting a lot of grants out there, helping universities understand the agronomy. There's a number of genetics companies that have varietals that are showing huge promise as they hybridize these crops. And if you look at the curve with the growth of corn acres, it really relates to hybrid crops. That stability and those yields get dramatically bigger and make the crop more valuable. You're talking about more value per acre, which is an important metric that we look for. Right now, for us, we have a very stable supply chain. We work with the largest hemp heart manufacturer in the world up in Canada. They're our number one supplier, but we have two backups that we can pull from in the event that there's a slowdown. Hemp parts are fairly available. We work with our manufacturer to give them a demand forecast early on so that we can be on time. There aren't truckloads of hemp parts sitting in warehouses across America. That is definitely not the case. So our supply chain is hyper coordinated. Our supply chain is also hyper traceable. Our manufacturer has a direct relationship with their farmers. They know what varieties they're planting. That's all tracked. While it's not a controlled substance in the drug fashion, it is a controlled substance in the sense that the departments of agriculture want to understand who's planting when, where, what. And so we know what's going into the ground. We know what field it's going into. We know what bin it's being stored in, and we have checkpoints along the way. And when I say checkpoints, I mean food safety checkpoints to measure any kind of microbials or whatever to keep products safe. So yeah, we work with partner organizations. There's a lot of associations and partners like HempWood, who's helping add value to the farmer's acre. Partner organizations that are developing genetics, partner organizations like University of Kentucky who are providing agronomic support. Greg, I feel like you could probably jump in here and share what your experience is on the supply chain and scaling. How do you look at that pain point?
So it was a pain in the ass a couple of years ago. And so we started growing enough hemp ourselves in order to break even plus 20%. 20% of our growing operation in our co-op that we started here doesn't turn out. So this year we planted, I want to say it was 380 acres of hemp. Out of that 380 acres, we ended up with a little over 300, maybe 320 that came into the factory. We end up buying from the open market, like you're talking about there, about a similar amount. So if we have, say, 700 or 800 acres that comes through our factory this year, we will have grown about half of that. That's kind of how we stabilize our supply chain. And then we buy from the surrounding states. So Indiana, or from Goshen, Kentucky, or from Tennessee, or from Missouri. We got, I think we got 465 bales that came down from St. Louis this year. So we have to search around for some of it in the open market. For the stalk, it's a little bit easier than for the seed because we don't have as many requirements as you guys do, because it's not being ingested into the body. But it's tricky but stable, I guess is the best way to put it. There's a lot of universities doing a lot of really good research, and they usually turn you on to their growing networks around where they're at. University of Illinois was here 2 days ago. And they said, oh, hey, we've got this grower, and this grower that grew the genetics we developed at our place. Would you be interested in buying their 5 or 10 acres each? And the answer is yes. And that ends up filling a couple of weeks of production here at the factory.
Yeah. Um, cool. Let's jump to another question. Ben, there's a question from Laura Sullivan. Thanks for tuning in, Laura. I think this is a good question. It gives us an opening. If you're extracting the hemp parts, and we're just
Mhm.
yeah, we're crushing the hemp parts. Extracting to me kind of would imply that we're using some solvent, but we're just crushing the hemp part protein and oil. Are there any waste streams for the shell of the seed? Ben, why don't you talk about
Sure.
that a little bit?
I mean, I think today a lot of folks would look at the shell as a waste stream. There's not a lot of uses for it, given the lack of development that it's had. There are some really high value opportunities that I think it could satisfy. The shells are filled with xylans. They are polymers of xylose. Xylose is the second most common sugar in nature, right after glucose. So we see a lot of potential to extract those xylose sugars and turn them into xylitol. It's the number one ingredient in most chewing gums. It's widely used in confectionery, commodity sweetener, low glycemic index, non-carcinogenic, um, and we've got a ton of them in hemp hulls. I think you can take that residue, and it's going to make a fantastic, potentially biochar. I'd prefer to make activated carbon, highly porous carbon material. It's used for everything from cleaning PFAS out of water, to, chemistry to clean up extracts, other things like that. Think about, making bourbon clarified, all sorts of uses. Today, no, it needs to be valorized, and I think we've got a pretty clear path to valorizing that. And I think it'll be a really strong outlet for Victory and for the hemp industry at large. Anybody processing hemp seeds. There are alternates, right? It is a great fiber source. It could be made into a fiber additive, for people, or roughage for animals that need that sort of dietary additive supplement. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. And Ruth Shimei has a couple questions that I think are relevant to what we're doing, what our business model. These are both relevant to Victory's business model. Do we have plans to have our own retail products? Right now, we don't. We have consumer sizes, but we don't spend a lot of energy, effort, or resources on promoting those products on Amazon. You can find our protein and our hearts on Amazon. You can also buy them directly off our website, because we want customers to be able to have our products. So we do hand pack those in our plant, but we don't have an effort or any plans to go bigger. We work with a lot of brands, which is really fun. So we love supporting the brands that are making the products. We reach, I would say, a ton more consumers that way than we could ourselves by being in so many brands. And it's a little bit of being the Gore-Tex of the high performance clothing industry, or the Intel Inside, right? That's kind of how we see Powered by Victory as a campaign that we hope takes root, being that key ingredient to drive quality in products. So that's a little bit on our plans to go into retail. As it relates to cannabinoid products, another one that I just want to knock off of Ruth, we do not plan on doing anything in cannabinoids. There are no cannabinoids in our products. We have the lowest threshold for cannabinoids and of any products, because we start with a dehulled heart. So that's kind of a feature. That's why we're able to sell our products all over the world, is because of the low inclusion of no inclusion of THC or CBD, and we can kind of talk to that from a food science perspective. Let's see. Do you think the hemp industry is ready for a unified digital marketplace where verified producers, processors, and buyers can transact with built-in traceability and smart contracts? Yeah, what do you think, Greg?
Nope. Simple
No.
answer. The reality is, whenever you do something like that, you're just adding cost to it. So with the internet the way it is right now, if somebody wants to buy HempWood, we tried to go through retailers, we tried to go through distributors, we tried to go through many different routes to market many of these marketplaces like you talk about. And the reality is, Amazon made it very easy for somebody to buy and sell things on Amazon at a very low cost at the beginning. And now they've become the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to taking the margin out of the product and driving the prices up. So, what I prefer is a locally grown, made, and sold product where you know the folks involved in it, not going through a digital marketplace that starts out as free and then takes 30% of the sales price once they establish themselves.
Ben, what's your thoughts on that? You took us through the ecovitis.
Sure. I think Ecovitis is a little bit different than that because that's kind of measuring everything from how much packaging do we consume, what sort of waste do we make, what is our greenhouse gas, how do we treat our employees, how do we treat our suppliers? Do we require that our suppliers, don't do things like use child labor or adhere to labor laws? So that, that was a case of us just doing well by doing right. It was most of those things were no-brainers. We're going to do it the right way. A unified marketplace, yeah, if there's smart contracts that ease the transactions and make them simpler and easier, we've not yet experienced that. Um, that's I think that's been a goal of the blockchain, right? We've been hearing about that for a long time, the traceability and easier contracts, easier ways to do business. We haven't seen it. Everything's still contracted the old-fashioned way. I mean, we sometimes are signing physical contracts. Maybe we can docu-sign things. All of our customers have different stipulations. Some of them are very specific. Some of them, it's pretty easy to transact with. So no, I don't know that we're ready yet, but I also have never seen an example of this that actually carries through with all of those promises.
Yeah. I think we're at an interesting inflection point just based on the fact that it's still we still can kind of write the rules to how we want to see the supply chain interact with our marketplace. So I would say that if we're going to do things a little bit different, and if that's something that the market is going to appreciate and pay a premium for, it's the apparatus is in place by way of the fact that we do have to trace a lot of what's coming from farm. The ability to trace this crop is in large part driven by the requirements to comply with hemp regulations. So I think that a lot of that is forced upon us, as opposed to bring your crop to an elevator and it gets commingled with 75 other trucks from the region. So I think we do have an opportunity to implement a more traceable standard. And the volume is at a point where we can put those kind of apparatus in. I think it's a great question. I think it's one that we could spend a lot of time on. Wu, you asked it, Wu Jihui. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. How do you see Canadian hemp grain as a competitor, given the tariffs and Canadian earlier mover advantage? Do you see more hemp grain as a substitute or a replacement overseas hemp grain? That's a great question. We love the Canadians. The Canadians are our #1 supplier right now, right? It's critical for our business as a backstop to what the lack of a supply chain here in the U.S. And we wanted to see U.S. farmers come on early, and the fact was that we just didn't get the acreage. You couldn't attract the acreage. A lot of that had to do with the fact that the green rush moved a lot of farmers into CBD, which left a lot of bad taste in folks' mouth. And we watched kind of the early adopters say, I'm going to take some time on the sidelines to see how your market plays out. So it's absolutely critical that the Canadian processors are shipping product down here. We are lucky that the USMCA agreement that was put into place at the first Trump administration has hemp as an exemption. So we don't have any tariffs in addition to the costs that we're paying now. And is it going to be a substitute or a replacement of overseas? I think that, yeah, we're pretty strict about only buying. We never buy anything that doesn't come from North America as our raw material goes, just because it becomes more challenging to understand the transparency in that supply chain. so I anticipate us continuing to grow with the Canadians, and I anticipate more acreage coming online here in the U.S. Certainly, we're hopeful that'll be the case. And the final thing that I would say, I would point to, is that we actually sell a decent amount of product back to Canada. It's not quite the most efficient route to market, right? So hemp parts come down, protein and oil go back. Sometimes they go over to Asia. So, the food industry is kind of like that. It's things can go backwards and forwards before they get to their final destination. And there's a little bit of that going on. Again, we're one of very few manufacturers that do what we do, and that's a value to us. What's your experience with Canada, Greg?
We sell to Canada. We had a 30% tariff on our sales to Canada until September 1st. When that got removed, I've shipped 2 orders in the last 6 weeks. So I love the Canadians. It's great fishing up there. Transportation of hemp bales doesn't work as well from going that far. So all of our stuff, 85% come from the county that we're in here, or within, say, 40 or 50 miles of us. And then the rest of it, the dual crop stuff, can come from 100 or 200 miles away. But for us, it's cost prohibitive to transport essentially hay bales any farther than 100 miles or so.
Yeah, we hear that with a lot of the fiber guys. I mean, and let's make clear, like, while it's hemp and it's unique, and you're still going up against incumbent materials, right? You still are going up against hardwood flooring. We're still going up against plant proteins. Just because it's hemp protein doesn't mean a customer is going to pay 10 times more than they would for a pea protein or a mung bean protein or the whatever it is. So there is a ceiling on how much we can charge for these products, and there is a cost basis that we can afford. Now, of course, I'm sure your products are at a premium, ours are at a premium, but we can only push it so high before there's just zero traction. It's a moot point. So as freight becomes a really important part of that COGS stack.
Hey, circling back to that traceability question that you had there, my cell phone number is on our website. If you want to know where your hemp came from, give me a call. That's easy. Every delivery has an actual hemp grower's license that comes to our place with it. So we don't have the need for it, because when we're buying the raw product, it literally tells me the name, the GPS coordinates of where it came from, the license, the test results, everything like that. So ours is controlled enough with the supply chain that there's no need to get a middleman in to tell me, the guy that I'm sitting in the duck blind with that grows hemp for me, to tell me where it came from. I can literally just call up Joe and say, hey, Joe, was it field A or field B? On the north side of the road or the south side?
Yeah, that's great. It's such a real world experience example. Milan, you asked some really good questions about carbon, and a couple different questions, and I want to encourage everyone on this to tune in. You're gonna get an email about our next webinar. This isn't the end of this. We're gonna take a couple more questions, but I want to encourage you, because we're going to have a carbon expert who's got a carbon company who's coming on the he buys a lot of carbon credits, registers a lot of carbon credits for our farmers up in Canada. He's going to be joining us on the next webinar. It's a really important part of the business, but I don't want to steal his thunder. So I'm gonna hope, Milan, that you show up at our next webinar with your questions. Sid asks a great question. Maybe I'll kick this one over to Ben. Sid's asking when he predicts we'll be able to match bulk pricing comparative to other protein ingredients like whey or soybean protein or other protein sources. Whey is pretty expensive, so I think it's just so different. But soybean, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I'm going to couch my answer with the different protein sources all carry different price points and different value propositions. There's a reason for that. We don't necessarily need to match soy or need to match whey. Being dairy free is hugely beneficial for a large number of the brands that we service. Now, there are other places where they don't care that there's dairy in it. So that really depends. To answer the question more directly, though, I think we can get within striking distance of whey pretty quickly. If you're talking about something like soy protein concentrate, that's a very inexpensive protein. There's just such an advantage as far as I mean, there's been many years, billions of dollars, hundreds of scientists, dozens and dozens of companies, millions of acres, and a huge head start. So hemp has the potential to produce the yields in the field to get the raw material costs down to a place where they're pretty competitive with soybeans. And then I think we produce more value per pound than a soybean can. That's because we're producing the sugars and producing the carbon and producing the oil and producing the protein. You can't do all of that with a soybean. Not that it's not a versatile product. I mean, you see it everywhere. It's in millions and millions of acres. So a huge amount of that is dependent on our partners working on hemp genetics. And that's a slow game, especially if you're not willing to invest billions of dollars and go full CRISPR or Talon or pick your modification tool. Most of this is going to be, we'll call it traditional breeding, maybe some tools that are more sophisticated than we had 20 years ago, 40 years ago. So we can go a lot faster, but it still requires growing seasons and opposite growing seasons doing work, south of the equator. I think to reach parity with soy, a decade would be good, but I think that we'll have a huge market well before that. We don't need price parity to, have a multi-$100 million market for our hemp ingredients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to jump over a question for our dear friend Jamie Petty, who's been a veteran of the hemp industry for before any of us that I know. She's been raising the flag, lighting the torch, kept the torch lit for a long time. She's seen so many iterations of hemp and always been on the front lines working with farmers to connect them to processors. So Jamie, thanks for tuning in. Her question starts out with a statement about, I'm fielding an increased number of calls from our regional farmers. They're interested in hemp as diversification. 3 calls just yesterday. That's great. My vision, as it always has been, is the potential for dual crop production. Do you feel that the expansion, understanding of genetics and agronomy practices would lend itself to partnering with both Victory Hemp and HempWood in the near future? In the past, it was nearly impossible to appeal to Hoosier farmers, who I think those are farmers in Indiana, who viewed it as a competitor to soybeans and corn. Now, with so many more farmers embracing regenerative practices, looking for diversification, do you see the potential for Victory Hemp and HempWood to collaborate on production, allowing farmers to maximize their ROI? Greg, this is for you.
So we're always buying hemp. So what you need to do is, if somebody's doing a dual crop hemp, we buy about 50% of our material comes from this. And so people grow it for the seed on the top. Sometimes it goes to Chad. Sometimes it goes other places. Sometimes they're using it for planting seed for the next year. After they take off the top of the plant, we buy the bottom of the plant. We ask that they store it in a barn until the springtime when we run out of what we grew here, because we have hemp coming out of our ears right now when it is harvest season. We'll end up with a couple of thousand bales that arrive here in September, October. We're right in the thick of that right now. We don't have enough roof to put it underneath of. And so if people are outside of our own growing co-op that we have here, but you want to sell us the dual crop bales, we pay the same price. It'll have to be delivered to us. So it ends up getting the farmer a little bit less than if they were growing a dedicated crop, but they've already made the money off of the top of the plant. And so we usually start pulling those bales in about April. And our production for April, May, June, July, and even August comes from those dual crop bales. And here in the Midwest, we've got them from St. Louis. We've got them from Louisville. We've got them from Missouri. We've got them from Tennessee. So absolutely, we're always looking for more hemp. As we grow, we need to get more hemp coming in, especially in the springtime from that dual crop method.
Cool. Yeah, I figured that would be kind of your story. And you know, but victory and food on the other side, I think we're a little bit more of a Goldilocks, right? We need it can't be too hot, it can't be too cold. It has to dehull right, it has to taste right, it has to have the right amino acid profile. There's a lot of conditions to meet our quality specs in order for it to pass. And not every variety, unfortunately, meets our requirements. Because at the end of the day, not all seeds going to be the same as one could imagine. And its real consistency is a very important part of the value proposition that we offer to the manufacturers behind us, and it has a huge impact on our profitability. So while we do take seed from farmers that are growing for dual purpose crops, it's always really helpful for them to engage with us before they plant and say, hey, does this variety work? I want to see if I can space it a little bit closer so it'll grow a little bit taller, so I'll have a little bit more fiber. And you know, I'll combine off the top of the head. Will this variety work for you? It becomes more challenging when we get to the end of the season and the farmer can't find a market, or the farmer says, hey, I got this crop. Well, now you're standing in line with all the other guys that we were in a contract with, in addition to the fact that we have to go through the process of, all right, well, he's qualified to meet our quality standards. Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I don't think we're quite Goldilocks. We try to design a process that's pretty robust so we can take a lot of quality inputs and still make a quality output, right? It's um, that's kind of the hallmark of a good industrial process is you can handle a lot of different inputs and still make the right spec on the outer end. Now, Chad's definitely right. Not everything matches, right? There's varieties that produce too much CBD, and that would limit us in accessing markets in Southeast Asia where there's extremely tight specifications. We don't want to see plants that are super tall because they're hard to harvest, things like that. But yeah, I think there's still potential. Um, and the Goldilocks is matching both markets' needs, the food and the fiber.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. God, we have so many good questions here, and there's more rolling in. One from Andrea Herman. I'm a big fanboy of Andrea. I learned a lot from Andrea. She's been in the hemp industry forever. She was one of the first agronomists I ever learned. I didn't even know there was hemp agronomists. She asked two questions. Do you see a uniform specification for the redundancy? Um, and I think that's, you know, that's exactly what we're looking for. Is we're looking for predictable outcomes in our process so that we can understand our profit margin as it relates to dehulling yields, as it relates to the split between oil and protein. Protein is by far the outperformer on just revenue capture. So it's important that we're using arts that have a decent more protein than oil. And there is variation from specification to specification, the other, or variety to variety. And the other kind of part that's challenging for us is some of our equipment, i.e. the color sorters, work a lot better with larger hearts, right? The heart size has an enormous amount of impact on the outcome of that processing equipment and its effectiveness. I'm going to blow through a couple of and the most important, so Andrea is offering some thoughts here that the most important key in the collaboration between the processors to create the redundancy, and she couldn't be more on point on that. I think that, yeah, that there's so much communication that goes into shipping anything to in any direction between us, that it's almost nauseating. It's my least enjoyable part of working in this industry is all the back and forth on the technical aspects of it, which is probably why I let other people do it who are really good at it. And then let's see. Paul asked a good question. Paul J. von Hartmann. What impact do current THC limits have on U.S. industrial hemp production? Has hemp's federal designation since 1942 as a strategic resource been applied to the increase or suspension of THC limits on industrial hemp regulation? Ben, you like talking about THC. Why don't you jump on this one? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. I do not like talking about THC in industrial hemp legislation. Um, it's a little bit of a thorn in my side. We spend too much money testing for THC and not finding THC, and we look hard. We're not no blinders on there. Um, a lot of the legislation that looks like it might be coming down the pipeline is, I think, potentially aimed at closing the kind of the loophole around producing cannabinoids from hemp and marketing them in states, or marketing them in the absence of a recreational marijuana program. So it's really not in Victory's it's not concerning for Victory if that loophole's closed. We don't do anything with cannabinoids in any way, shape, or form. Not to make any opinion statement about that marketplace, but we're not too concerned about it. There's always a carve out for grain and a carve out for hemp fiber. So I think the short answer is I don't have a lot of worry there. There could be the unintended consequences of legislation that's not crafted carefully. Certainly, I guess we did see that with the Farm Bill in 2018, but I do believe the intent was to create a market for hemp grain and hemp fiber. So I expect that to be preserved, and certainly the voices screaming the loudest seem to be echoing that. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah.
All right, cool. We got 2 minutes left. We went way longer than I booked you guys for, and I appreciate that, and I hope our guests appreciate that as well. So we're gonna wrap it. We got time for maybe one more question, but if you have questions and we didn't get to them, we could try to answer them by email. But also, if you go to wefunder.com, victory.hemp.foods/ask, you can ask questions there. Please ask them, because if you have them, other people likely have them as well. And so last question I'm going to jump on is an easy one. I feel further out, like South Dakota is prime for crop and dead center to spread out. Yes, would love to replay this. Okay, so there'll be a replay of this, working back and front. You know what's cool about South Dakota is it's the last state to legalize, where Kentucky was the first state to legalize. So we kind of got the timeline bookends between those two. And I think there's a ton of brilliance in South Dakota having waited as long as they did. I think there's a great supply chain growing up in South Dakota. I've heard from a number of different seed companies, farmers, processors. They're all coming together up there. So, I'd love to take a trip up there. I know that there was a hemp bill. Weren't you just in, Greg, you were just in South Dakota, weren't you? Yep, you're on mute.
I was in Minnesota 2 weeks ago. I did see Ken. So Ken is very big in the South Dakota hemp industry. There's a lot going on. They've been leading the way for, I think, 2 years in a row, maybe more, with grain and fiber hemp. Their land is very good for it. As far as grain goes, it works very well for the daylight hours when you get to that parallel. So there's a lot of opportunity up there. You don't need to have irrigated land. You can do it on dry land, as long as you get some rain to get it up. So it works really well there. Kentucky, I'm partisan to this area just because if Kentucky was the best place to grow hemp prior to the prohibition, it makes sense that it would be the best place for it to grow again. But there's also lots of room. Missouri, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, it all works really well. I see the Kentucky Proud hat. We've got a lot of that stuff around here too. So it works very well in the Midwest, the whole way up into Canada, the whole way down to Tennessee. There's a lot of good stuff happening for fiber hemp in Kansas. You got Melissa Nelson over there that actually had 5 tons an acre that came out. That's pretty impressive, because our goal every year is 3 tons. You see some places that do get in those 5s, but as long as you get 3, the farmer gets paid. I grow hemp. We all grow hemp around here, me and my buddies and everything. And we do it on a small scale. It's more of like a craftsman growing scenario. We do dove hunts over top of it. A lot of our farmers are 10-acre farmers, and that's fine. That's great. It's a manageable amount of something that's pretty cool to do, because I live 17 minutes from town. And so there's not a whole lot going on out on the Wilson farm, except for hey, I've got some hemp. I can go check on that. I can check on my cows. I can check on my pigs. And so going around and taking care of the land, the stuff that actually feeds us, the stuff that actually shelters us, and putting something in the ground that's good for it, not bad for it. And a lot of those other crops you're talking about, beans, I love soybeans. Soybeans are great. The soybean board has been very helpful for us developing our adhesives. It's the sprays that you got to watch out for because hemp doesn't have all of these glyphosate and all these other things that are getting sprayed on it. And that's the part that actually is not good for humans. That's what we got to make sure that we don't lose sight of trying to make this ultra competitive with all the other commodity crops that are out there, which then requires hurting the land and hurting the people by spraying things on it that then create allergies, by putting things in the soil that then wreak havoc on what you actually intend on doing in that land 5 years from now. I much prefer when somebody fertilizes with chicken manure than synthetics. That's a much better way of doing it. And so keeping it in that mindset, maybe it's not about how you can make it penny for penny the same as other commodities out there. Because then all of a sudden the only people making money are the traders, not the growers, not the consumers. We're all getting sick on the land or sick off of the food because somebody wants to have a couple more bushels an acre come out of it.
Well said, Greg. All right, we're over time. Appreciate you joining us. Robin, thanks for the question about South Dakota. We'll answer some more of your questions online and we'll set up another webinar and send you more information on that following this. Thanks everyone for joining us.